do is I'm going to look for a photo on Pinterest. I'm going to show you what exactly I'm looking for. I'm going to show you why I'm changing the curves as well. All right. So let's see. I'm going to have one of you guys give me something to look for too. So I'm going to have you guys tell me what reference photo to look for.
I would say the best would probably like some type of face or a portrait, because I know a lot of those have a bunch of midtones from Pinterest and stuff like that.
Bet, I got you.
Yeah, portrait would be fire.
All right, sweet. All right, bet. So using Pinterest like we all fucking do. Did he tell you where he goes for his reference photos?
Nah, I think he was just saying online Pinterest, and he doesn't use the iPad. He uses the computer still.
Yeah, he uses Photoshop.
Oh, Steven, to add on to this, you think you could cover like a topic of like full cohesive sleeves? Because that's something like I don't know, like different to stencil, you know?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I got you. So this photo right here, I would never use. It's so
Yeah,
grayed
a
out.
lot of midtones.
It's all midtone. It's all midtone. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to download both of these. I'm going to show you why I would use one as opposed to the other. So this one right here is better. I wouldn't use this simply because it's very pixelated once you start zooming in. And I want as much clarity as I can receive. Even this one's a little pixelated for my liking. But when it's pixelated, I will also say this. If you're going for more high contrast route and you're not trying to get every pore in the skin, you're not trying to really get all of that glossy highlight. Fuck. Thank you. And you're not trying to get all of this in the pores. One, really easy to do with white, but if you're taking Dan's approach, that doesn't matter to you, right? You're looking at the flow of the hair. You're looking, I'm going to download multiple of these because this is a better hair reference. But if you're looking at the actual levels of black to gray to light, this is, in my eyes, a better photo if you're looking at the 30-30-30.
Yeah, I was about to say that's fire.
Right? So you have on the left side of the face, you have that light coming in from what seems to be a window. All of that is white. The top half, middle, and the right side of the face, that's a little bit darker. The only thing I don't like, that's all midtone. The only thing I do not like in this photo specifically is how little difference there is in the facial structure on the right side of the face, in the shade. That's not going to translate to skin very well. It's going to be very flat. So I wouldn't use this, but it's pretty fucking close. I'd want to, because there's a lot of blacks in the eye, so that's going to pop like a motherfucker. The eyebrows are very defined. Like this would make a very good portrait to stencil in practice. But I wouldn't personally use that. That one would be really cool, but the back of the head would be fucking flat in the top left of what I'm looking at. This photo is dope, but the lips are too dark. So I'll use a couple of these as an example, and I'll tell you which one I would use and why. All right. So when looking for a photo, like I just showed you, you're looking for essentially that rule of thirds, but it also should meet your standard of quality, right? So I've met a lot of artists that can use blurry photos, like nothing that's crazy. Like they don't need a 4K photo. And that's okay because you're not going for that 4K result, right? I want higher detail because I want to get the most detail I can out of it, like in a skull. A skull, I want as much detail as I can find because I intend on putting in all of the cracks in the skull, any little blemish the skull might have, I want to put in there because that's going to add character, for me at least. So I'm going to start with the first one and why this isn't a good fucking image. So this isn't true black and gray. There's a hue over this. There's a very warm hue over this, right? So you're going to have to first go in here, go into your magic wand tool on the top. You're going to go to hue, saturation, brightness, and you're going to take the saturation all the way down. Now you're looking at black and gray. Now fucking with the curves. Dan like goes crazy with it, right?
Probably even more than that, to be honest.
For me, this would be the highest I'm going with it. That would be the highest I'm going with it. But when I'm fucking with the actual curves, I'm not really going crazy high. Like, I don't want to take this higher than like that for me personally. And that's in the fourth quadrant, so the one all the way to the right. If you're trying to fuck with the whites and the highlights in the photo, it's always going to be this quadrant right here. All right, the lower you take this, darker it's going to get. The higher you take this, the lighter it's going to get, right? If you bring it all the way to the top, that's okay. It's just not what I do personally, right? When you want to fuck with the darks, you're looking at the second quadrant. So in the second quadrant, you want to bring it down, right? And you could see specifically in areas like this, you could really see the difference of where it matters. So look here. Sorry. Look here. Look at the line that separates this highlight from the midtone. You can even look at the teeth, right? Focus in that area. You see how defined that line is already? When you start fuck with these, bring the wrong layer. When you start fuck with these, you're bringing that highlight up. Here, that line starts to disappear. Once you start fucking with the second quadrant and you bring it down, those lines really start to come out, right? But now, if you fuck with the curves too much and really mess with the exposure too much, is what you're seeing here. For me, this is way too much. And that's simply because the eyes, to me, are way too dark. Way too dark. I don't want them to look that dark because on skin, it's going to look like she has two fucking black eyes. It's going to look like something's wrong, right? However, I like this exposure for the hair. So if you look at a lot of Dan's pieces, Dan's hair is very simplistic, right? It's the same way Gracie does her hair. It comes out really, really well. But with this hair, I would absolutely do this hair at this exposure, except for all the way over here. I feel like there should be a little bit more in this area unless you darken up that background.
Would you use the pen for this area, like when you do the curves, but the pen?
Explain that a little more.
So go to like the curves button, and then oh shit. Yeah, then you see the little triangle right out above curves?
Yeah, and doing the pencil.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and for those who don't know, you can do this. You can use the pencil and essentially select areas that you want to change the exposure or the curves to. So I'll use airbrushing, I'll use a soft brush, and you can change the size of the brush. But if I take, if I take this and I brush over all this, see how it gets lighter? It's only affecting the curves in that area. So if I decide to take all this down, it's only messing with that one area, right? So with what RJ's saying, if I want to mess with the curves a little bit more, and I like the face, let's say I like the face here, right? You can take the pencil tool with the curves and you can brush over the hair and only get that high exposure effect with the hair. You're going to have to adjust the background if you even use this background. I wouldn't, just because there's another face in the background. But you can now mess with it to the point where you want to.
Can I add something else too?
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Dan was messing with like the actual corner dots, not like adding any extra ones, if that makes sense too.
But he was only fucking with these.
Yeah, so like delete all the other ones you have, and then he just like dragged that top left one or the top right one to the left.
Yeah, so essentially see where that's at right there?
Mm-hmm.
So if I go back and I just do this, same
Oh,
exact.
sure. Okay.
Yeah, so same result. So if he
All
like
right.
he messed with this one too,
Yeah, sometimes he will, but not really.
and he essentially just kind of dragged it in.
But
Okay.
he did
Oh.
mention though, I do remember him saying that he goes through the entire piece and goes through sections and makes the look of what he wants for the whole piece. Like he'll be like, I want this to be more highlighted than this part
100%.
necessarily.
100%. Yeah. So I do the same thing in a different way. Right. So if I'm using a real photo, or I'm going to use, because I like this photo a little bit better just for this kind of example. If I'm using this photo, for instance, right? A little blurry. I don't really like it. But if we're using this photo for exposure purposes or curves purposes, right? I'm always going into hue, saturation, brightness, and making sure that saturation is all the way down. Then I'm fucking with the curves. With this, I'm not going to go all the way up here because to me, it just looks way too fucking blank in these areas. Specifically here and here, it just looks a little bit too light for my liking. I like the portraits that he does. However, I do a lot of, I would say, Greek sculpture work, right? So I do a lot of actual sculptures rather than people's faces, right? But when I'm doing a person's face, even a woman's face, I want to see a little bit difference in tone here to emphasize that cheekbone, because you have that going so hard over here. Like this triangle is way more defined on this side than on this side. It's barely there. So if you intend to put that triangle on this side as well, and here specifically, it's going to be so light, it's not really going to hold, right? So his theory of going higher contrast to make it pop more, 100% applies here. But if I'm going this light everywhere, remember, he doesn't use white. I like to use white, right? So if you're using white, if you're using white, you don't necessarily want to go that high. Because once you go, look at all the highlights in here, right? So if you're looking at the highlights here, here, I'm going to create a different layer just so I don't have to fucking keep erasing shit. If you're looking at the highlights here, here, and here, watch how they disappear, even in this eye right here. Because I like the highlights personally, especially adding white into the pieces. It's one of my favorite things to do. I think it just adds an extra touch that makes it a little bit more realistic if you don't overuse the white, right? So emphasizing the pores in her cheek, I like when I see a piece like that. That just catches my interest way more than just a high contrast piece. So this is the difference in style, right? I'll bring this up to like here because those highlights are still there, but I'm going to drop the darkness down to like there, right? So it makes it pop just as much, but you're not losing those highlights. They're a little bit muted. But if you go in and you take this all the way up, like he does, yes, those highlights are there, but he doesn't use a 20 as much. So he's not aiming to get all of this structure in here. He's essentially going to restructure the nose and essentially just make sure that nose looks straight and make sure he gets this curve of the lip, right? For me, I'm looking for more detail. You see where his style and his process makes way more sense if you're going a high contrast route and you don't use white, where in mine, it kind of eliminates the use for a white. I like to use white. Simply put, right? So the way he does it with how high he utilizes curves doesn't necessarily work for what I'm trying to do. That kind of makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because his way works phenomenally for his style. But with portraits, I like to keep those highlights in. Because those, if you've ever seen somebody do like a hyper realistic portrait where they use white to highlight the pores in the skin, to me, that is so nice and so fucking clean. I've seen a lot of these pieces healed too. I'm trying to achieve that. So my process has to look a little bit different, right? So for this, if I'm using this, I'm kind of looking like something more like that, right? Especially with more of a realistic face like this. I'm going more like this. And when I'm doing this, using this face, I keep saying this. That's not what I want to be doing. A lot of this is skin tone, right? So all of this in here, I'm going to leave relatively skin tone. This right here, I know I'm going white, right? This is white. This is skin tone, right? I'm just hitting skin tone briefly around where that white is going to go. So in theory, this has to be a 20 or a 40, right? If you're looking, I'm going to start somewhere. I'm going to start in a different way and explain this better because my head's moving too fast already. All right, cool. So when you're working with a photo like this, you have one point in the face that's the brightest. Nothing else in the face can be as bright as that one point, right? If you have two spots that are the same, that have the same highlight, it's going to make the face look flat. You have the darkest point and you have the lightest point. Nothing can be as dark as that darkest point. Nothing can be as light as that lightest point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so going further with that, for me, the lightest point here is here, here, and here, right? So I already know in here is going to be the lightest part of the face. Okay? This is a close second, right? So for me, I'm putting white in this area, here, the gloss of the lips, little bit here, but I'm emphasizing how much white I'm putting in the middle, okay? Because that's my brightest point. Everything outside of this is a drop off, so nothing's going to be as light as this area in the face. The eyes are an exception because it has those highlights in the eyes. The reflection is going to be technically the brightest point, just like the pupil is going to be the darkest point. Nothing else in a portrait is absolute darkness. The pupil is always going to be that darkest spot because it's just nothingness. It's a tunnel of just fucking nothing, right? But right here has to be the lightest point. So if there's anything else that is as light as that, you have a problem. So if you just use skin tone in these spots that are supposed to be the highlights, everything else around it has to be washed out with a 20. Because nothing can be as bright as that. So to get that to pop out the same amount without using white, you need to brush over everything else with a light tone. For me, I like to use my 20 in a lot of places. So up here would be skin tone. I would leave skin tone in this area right here, brushing everything around it with the 20, building up from, let's go a light 40, 20, light 20, right? Is going to be just straight 40. I'm building it into this. This is my skin tone. Yes, this is skin tone, but skin tone I'm using as the lightest mid-tone I have, right? So my brightest areas are still going to be here, 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 exception here. And I'm going to highlight these with white. Even in here, I'm not going to want to use white, but I am going to want to define this roundness around the mouth. And if you don't have this pocket of roundness around the mouth, it kind of mutes the mouth a little bit. So even in a portrait like this, where you don't really see, you see the roundness on the right side of the face, right? You guys can see this right here, this light spot.
Yes.
Even though you don't have it over here, you want to make sure it's there and it's more symmetrical, because that makes the lips pop just that much more. That makes sense?
Yes.
So anytime I have this on one side and not on this side, I create it on this side. I'm more conscious of it on that side. So did that make sense with having the lightest point and everything else is kind of like a fall off from that?
Yes.
Everybody? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, the darkest point. Now, this is something I learned from Deanna, and this is also something I kind of learned building up to what I'm doing now. The darkest point in any portrait is the pupil. That's the only thing, if you're doing color, that's the only thing that's black. In black and gray, that should be your darkest point. So I know artists that use different tones of black. Like some people use regular dynamic, the white cap, just straight black. And they also have a cap of allegory. Allegory is very dark. A lot of people that use allegory have told me to fucking try it out, and I'm going to this following week. Side note, John Nelson, met John Nelson at the convention. Really cool fucking dude. We're going to do a collab coming up and hopefully a podcast.
Hell yeah.
Past that, after I get more friendly with him, I'm going to try and get him on here as well to either interview him on here or have you guys just ask him questions and just kind of roll off of it, kind of like what Dan Price did.
Hold on, pause. We can't just roll past that. Like, that's not a big deal. Congratulations.
Oh, it's awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's dope, man. John Nelson's a beast.
Yeah,
And he does.
Sweet.
I've been listening to him for years. He got some dope. That allegory stuff is dope. I use allegory.
Fire. He gave me 2 sample packs of allegory to try it out. So he really wants me to get into that. And then one of my other boys just put me onto the same shit, so I have to try it. Yeah, I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, I seen when I went to the Chicago convention, there's like a dope ass horror sleeve. I don't know if, or leg sleeve. I don't know if you've seen it, but he used for his deepest blacks, he used Panthera, then he went to allegory, then he went to dynamic, and then he was just going off his gray wash.
Yep. So
great.
that essentially that goes off my point right there, and it proves my point that there's different tones and different shades of black. Just like when you're painting, and Deani knows this because she's fucking going to town. There's different shades of black. I don't know if I'm right on this, but like the ivory black I was told is the darkest, if I'm not mistaken, or at least it has a blue hue to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the ivory, and then right next to it is matte black.
Yep. So those are the two darkest. So any other black that you get will not essentially heal as black as those two. So taking that concept to tattooing, a lot of artists I know, they will use in this sense allegory or Pantera here and here to get that deep dark black, right? Anywhere else that's super fucking black, they're using a lighter tone. And that's because this concept is the darkest point in a photo or in a portrait has to be the eyes. It has to be the pupil, right? So what a lot of people do, let's say red is my black, right? These are the only two spots that are really black, right? If I'm now using, I'm gonna go pink. If I'm trying to fully saturate all of this, purple, I guess, all of this has to be, if you're using a dynamic, that has to be an 80. It looks black, but it cannot be as dark as the pupil based on this principle, right? So using an allegory here and then using dynamic here, healed, those pupils are going to pop just a little bit more than that darkness that you find behind that hair.
Hey Steven,
Shoot.
on the topic of hair, is there a way to mess with your curves or on Procreate, grabbing a portrait and making hair simplified? Like, can
So
you simplify hair by messing with curves and stuff so it's not as detailed?
yeah, so what you can do, I'm very picky with hair. So like some hair I freehanded after really understanding hair, but when you're doing hair, you're not looking at it as lines. You're not looking at it as each strand, right? So all of these strands of hair that you're seeing, I'm actually going to do, and oh, I'm gonna do, oh, was I on that layer the whole time? Fuck. Nope. Okay, cool. So when you're doing different types of hair or when you're approaching hair, you kind of need to simplify it already. But going off the principle of realism, just because that's what I do, I'm gonna have a Neotrad artist on here too. His name's Harlan Canner. Another side note, he's one of my really good friends. Harlan is a fucking beast with Neotrad, so I want him to come on here and talk to you guys about mindset and talk to you about the principles of tattooing. Because if you guys didn't start with traditional or Neotrad, traditional really, if you didn't start with traditional, all of the principles and the foundation that you will find in any style of tattooing, it comes from traditional work. So any principle he can teach you, it will benefit you in one way or another, right? Now, the basics of realism, everything is shapes, right? So with hair, it's kind of hard to just define shapes. So what I'll do is I'll blur my eyes. Like, do you have the capability of blurring your eyes without like squinting?
Yeah.
You guys know how to do that? And if you
I
don't,
can do that. Yeah.
fire. You can get the same result. If you can't do that, you can get the same result just by squinting, right? So if you do that, you will start to see shapes. And these shapes are just differences in value, differences in tone, right? So I like to zoom in sometimes just to make sure I'm getting everything, but just to stay back, you have this shape right here, and these lines aren't going to be fucking perfect. You have this shape right here, right? Then outside of that, you have this shape right here, right? This is how you simplify hair. You just go shapes, just like you would realism, right? So when you're looking at a nose or lips, you're not looking at a nose or lips, or even the chin. You're not just looking at the full chin as a structure. You're looking at it as shapes, right? So when you're looking at lights and darks, this is a light shape, right? And then you have this dark shape right above it, right? When you break everything into shapes, you break down the piece into smaller portions in a way, right?
Yeah.
So you want to approach it in shapes, okay? So with hair, it's the same concept. It's all shapes. So in here, these are the shapes I see, and this is what I choose to leave out. If I'm working here, I see this shape, right? And then inside here, I see this shape right here. I see this little fucked up shape. This is another shape. This is how you simplify hair. It's just shape by shape. It's not strand by strand. If you work strand by strand, you're going to overcomplicate, or you're going to make a mistake by using a liner to do your hair. And it's going to be so complex, you're not going to have that dimension you want. Because you're not going to get that same dimension with a liner than you would an actual mag or a round shader, right? So defining these little shapes in this area, this is what's going to bring your hair to life. Because you don't see me being like, okay, here's a strand, okay, here's a strand, here's another. You don't want to do that. You're defining the shapes in between. So right here, these tones are darker than the light tones above it. So that's my shape. Even right here, if you guys can see it, this builds into a triangle. Most of the time, hair is just open fucking triangles. Fucked up looking triangles, but open triangles. This right here, triangle. I see a darker area right here in that hair that's another triangle. This comes up into an open-ended triangle, both ends, but it has that triangular shape, right? So that's how you simplify it. If you're messing with the curves, you can use the pencil option that RJ brought up, and you can go over all the hair here, kind of how I'm doing it. It's going to bring out more detail if you go lighter like this. But if you decide to mess with it like this, you can bring this. I mean, that's as high as it's allowing me to fucking go. Certain areas can go lighter, like so. You can drag this in a little bit, darken that up. That will simplify it just by bringing out those tones, essentially the light tones, even more. But the problem I have with that is all of this. It's a benefit and it's a little bit of a loss. So there's pros and cons. All of this is very dark.
So I told him to simplify hair. See if you can.
So all of, sorry, give me 1 second. Ordering food.
Fine.
Whatever you want to grab me. What are you doing? Fucking pineapple? Give me 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. Oh, I can't mute. Never mind. Let's do it.
If it's open, because Pizza Plus closes at 9, Tasco's closes at 10. Pizza Bear taking orders for another 4 minutes, so I might miss it.
Pizza Vera.
Another 4 minutes for taking orders in here.
Try calling them, see if they'll accept a DoorDash order right now. Seriously, because I've called before and they're like, oh, our kitchen shut down. So that might just be running by the open hours. So with this, the only benefit over here that I'm seeing is you can define all of these areas right here and emphasize that.
Can I say something right quick?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so I was talking to Darius about this. I think it was earlier today, when we were going over this with Dan. That this is just a lot like art, where we do squint our eyes when we're painting, simplify everything. But honestly, you could do with what you were, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. But
Yeah.
you can do what you were telling me earlier about making right next to her neck, 80%, and then kind of like insinuating some strands in it, without having to go crazy into detail.
Essentially.
I don't know if that works.
Yeah, another way you could do that. So if you're going full saturation, for instance, so if you're using an 80 for, I just want to make sure I got this right so I can actually play off this. You're essentially going 80 all here, is what you're saying, in theory?
Yeah.
And then you're saying you can kind of go at it strand-like?
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah, you can add a strand like, or you could do it like in blocks to where it has almost like a flow where you could see the lights and where the darkest darks hit so that it flows with the rest of the hair. That makes sense?
Exactly. And the way, exactly, the way I would do that is I would fill majority of it with 80, and then I would leave skin breaks, like
Okay.
in here, let's say, and then I would essentially dip my 60 and then dip my 80, and I'd brush over all this so it's a hair lighter, but it still shows essentially what you're trying to do by creating that motion, right?
Okay.
But here's the thing that I want everybody to do with this spot right here. Blur your eyes and look at it.
Pitch black.
It's still just one block of dark, right?
Mhm.
So if you do end up putting 80 in here and then let's say 60 there, it's going to look off simply because when you blur your eyes, that's what people see from a distance. So getting those true tones and values, when you blur your eyes, there's not much that pops out here. Like if I'm blurring my eyes currently, I see a change in tone here and a little bit here. But in here, I see nothing when I blur my eyes. So I would focus any difference in tone in the forefront and right here. Anything in the middle, yeah, like I completely crossed over this spot right there. So I wouldn't even put that in there.
Would you still brush it in the direction when you start when
Yeah.
you start building it?
Yeah, I would. So when I pack, so whenever I fully saturate anything, even packing black, I don't really do little circles majority of the time. I do if it's like an area like if I'm going here where it's really defined, I'm going to end up doing circles and then I'm going to pendulum all around it, covering all my ground. But even when I fully saturate stuff, I normally will pendulum in the direction I'm going.
Okay.
So that's how I'll approach that. But
I know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, as far as the blurring your eyes and stuff, I seen Noah Beasley's seminar, and he puts a separate picture of the same exact photo, and he uses the Gaussian blur so that he can have his tones while he's doing his references. So while he's like tattooing, he'll have like a reference of one will be like the main one, the original picture. One will be like maybe he'll mess with the curves, and then another one will be a Gaussian blur where the Gaussian blur is on, so he knows the definitive tones more if it doesn't need to get lost in the details.
Right. So kind of like this.
Yeah, he'd have them like next to each other. Yeah.
That's
You know,
dope.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Can
that's
you-
the guy JP, the one who just joined the group. I don't know if he's on here right now. He does that too, and he gets good effects on a lot of his portraits.
Fire. I like that a lot, actually. I don't know
Um,
why I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, it really
Um,
helps you without having to squint your eyes. You could just continuously look at the part you need to when you want to do it.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's fire. I never would have thought about that. It's like the simplest shit that you look over. That like this, I'm gonna start doing.
Yeah, that's why I love listening to people who are just so fucking gifted, and you just continue to build off their tools as well.
I like that a lot, actually. That's gonna fuck with me for a while. Why didn't I know that? Oh yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, that shit,
There's so
like,
much tricks in this game.
Oh my god, yeah. And if you haven't noticed yet, all the tricks just dial back to simplifying. You notice that? Any
Yep.
trick that I'm teaching you that is going to teach you that anybody, it's just don't overthink it. It's literally just keep it simple. So, yeah, man, I like this a lot. I'm gonna start doing this. I don't know why I didn't think about it. I'm sitting here fucking manually auto focusing my fucking eyeballs. Yeah, but even with this now as like a literal visual representation, now you could see exactly what you need to get out of each tone and each value, and you get to see what doesn't fucking matter. Like, and I don't know if you guys have dealt with this yet, but adding this super dark area right here, it disappears here. So sometimes when you add this strand of super dark around everything else, this actually looks out of place on skin. Little tip, little trick. That's fucking awesome. Why didn't I think about using Gaussian blur? That's fucking crazy. But yeah, it's all shapes. Like when it comes down to hair or oversimplifying something or just kind of just being conscious of what your drop set is and what healed work looks like, understand the shapes you're going for and the tones you need to use everywhere that you go. That makes sense?
Mhm.
So if you decide to use white, it's a good idea, and use this as a reference, it's a good idea to just keep everything oversimplified and really raise your curves and keep all this skin tone, all of this skin tone, that works. For me, if you want to add whites to it, I'm focusing on keeping this detail. So I don't want to essentially oversimplify, or that's going to take out a lot of my efforts. Because it's also going to look really weird if you go for all this detail and dot all this white in the pores on this side, and it looks good because you have all of these midtones around it to emphasize that. And then on this side, it's all skin tone, and you can't necessarily get in and dot all this white. So for me, different from Dan, I'm using my 20 very lightly in here, and I'm saturating my 20 here. Yeah. I was
Do you do this in your non-realism pieces too?
non-reels and pieces different. I'm actually